And as you may already know, I've been a huge fan of Sonic the Hedgehog pretty much my entire life, with Sonic 3 in particular taking place as one of my favorite games of all time. So of course I, along with many others, have been waiting patiently with bated breath for the day in which we could finally sit down and play Sonic Mania. And while most of us expected the game to be good, very few predicted just how good it would be. Spearheaded by longtime Sonic fan game creator Christian Taxman Whitehead and Pagoda West Games, Sonic Mania sets out to bring the blue blur back to his roots by crafting a game to both complement and rival the classic 16-bit titles. And for the most part, I'm happy to say, Christian and crew absolutely knocked the ball out of the park. To begin with, the game is just pure joy to play, especially if you grew up with the classic series. No random throwaway characters that make up the ilk of modern Sonic. Mania is all about going back to what made these games iconic in the first place, and as such, there's only Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails to choose from when starting your adventure. The story, from what I can gather, revolves around a mysterious stone that seemingly has the ability to alter dimensions, which explains the remixed versions of each level that make up the majority of the game. Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails all basically control like you remember, with the additional drop dash ability unique to Sonic. This ability was one of the very first facets of the game revealed when Sonic Mania was first announced, and over the past year of marketing has been a huge focal point of demonstrations and trailers. You can utilize this ability by jumping and then hitting the button again to wind Sonic up, so that the moment he hits the ground in ball form, he'll blast off with the speed equivalent to approximately half of a fully charged spin dash. It's a neat little ability that's pretty fun to put into practice, but honestly, I never really found it all that useful. Oftentimes you'll have enough momentum when running about to make it to top speed in a matter of seconds, and on the occasion where a drop dash might come in handy, it's usually more efficient and sometimes quicker to just stop and use a spin dash or curl into a ball while running. I can see this technique being a favorite of speedrunners or people who just like to play around with mechanics, but for the vast majority of players, I don't see it as amounting to anything more than just a gimmick. Personally, I traded in a second for the Insta-Shield from Sonic 3, which I guess is technically there once you unlock it, and only if you don't mind not being able to save your game, which is kind of a strange design choice in my opinion. Not sure why you can't start a save file with this ability or the other unlockable ability, the Super Peel Out, activated. That just seems like arbitrarily walling off a feature of the game to fans that prefer an alternative moveset, but what do I know. However, this is ultimately a minor gripe that didn't really affect my enjoyment of the overall package, so I'm not going to criticize the game too harshly for it, especially since I've had so much fun with Sonic Mania overall, and one of the biggest reasons for my enjoyment comes in the form of the game's excellent level design. Most of the levels are remixes of stages you've seen before, but the developers put their own special spin on these worlds to make them truly unique. These classic levels often start out damn near identical to their 16-bit counterparts, but as the level progresses, it's taken in a different direction, and by the end, you'd swear you were in a completely different stage altogether. A perfect example of this would be Chemical Plant Zone. When you first enter the level, everything looks pretty much identical to how it looked in the first act of Sonic 2, yet just a few steps into the level, and Act 1 and Act 2 of the original game start to merge. When you finally beat the first act of Mania's Chemical Plant Zone, however, things take a drastic turn. Now the level has a different backdrop, new mechanics, new double helix bubble things, and everything is much bigger. Like Sonic 3 and Sonic CD, Sonic Mania's levels are absolutely massive, providing much of the impetus for replayability, as you're almost certainly going to experience the levels in a different way each time. Of course, bigger isn't always better, and oftentimes too much of a good thing can come at the detriment of the overall package, such as the case with Sonic CD. I've said before how I thought the levels in Sonic CD were too big and erratically designed to amount to anything more than a frustrating roller coaster ride, hindering an otherwise good game, and you can see similar issues with games like this year's Yooka-Laylee, only on a much more exacerbated scale in that case. Then there are games that try to be large and vast, but end up filling that space with pointless mountains, bodies of water, and repetitive enemy encampments. Breath of the Wild. Indeed, it seems that when designing large levels these days, developers usually end up following one of two paths. The levels are either full of oddly placed items, obstacles, stage hazards, and way too much to do, losing any sense of flow and coherence, or they end up being big, empty, and devoid of life or engaging gameplay. Sonic Mania, however, manages to walk the fine line between these two paths more delicately and with much more grace than practically any game I can think of in recent memory. The levels are large and full of enemies and obstacles, yet each level feels coherent and believable in its design. Many of the levels have their individual gimmicks, but not so much that they start to annoy the player. One of the new levels, Studiopolis, for example, has Sonic and friends climbing into the back of a news van and being transformed into radio waves to be bounced along satellite dishes to another area of the level. It would have been so easy for the developer to make something like this the primary method of traversal and design the level solely around it, yet Christian and crew restrain themselves, and as such, this aspect of Studiopolis only adds to the level's charm rather than trying to be the defining feature of it. Environments are also reactive, with glass shattering from sonic booms, oil igniting, and electric fields turning you into a magnet, and each world is rife with Easter eggs and callbacks to previous entries in the series. Though if you're concerned that the game might only be good for those who are familiar or are already a fan of Sonic games, go ahead and put those fears to rest, because Sonic Mania is no doubt a good game regardless of whether or not you've played a Sonic game before. Color drips from every nook and cranny of this world, and every frame's a painting, as the saying goes. If nothing else, Sonic Mania is the best looking Sonic game to date, overthrowing the likes of Sonic 3 and CD, which is an impressive feat in and of itself because those games are absolutely gorgeous. There is a little bit of a change in quality to the levels that I feel should be addressed, and that's that the old remix levels are noticeably tighter in their design and more enjoyable to play. This isn't to say that the new levels are bad, because they're not. In fact, they're among the best in the series overall. It's just that what the developer has managed to do with the older levels and mechanics of previous games has been done so well that they managed to overshadow the new additions of the game, which if anything is a credit to their design sensibilities and understanding of the source material. However, if there's one thing that I don't like about the level design, it would have to be that playing as Knuckles or Tails doesn't really add much to the experience. There are a few moments where a level can diverge or you can end up in an area that only Knuckles or Tails can reach, but these usually only act as secrets and distractions rather than changing the progression of a level in any meaningful way. One of the things I like best about Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which remains the best game in the series by the way, just throwing that out there, is that each character you played as changed the way the game is played quite drastically. Knuckles' playthrough was far different than Sonic or Tails, to the point that he even faced different bosses or found himself in areas of the level that were quite different from those experienced by the blue blur and his little buddy. And don't get me wrong, some of this is certainly present in Mania, with Knuckles having a couple different bosses and one completely different act of a level, but not to the same extent that Sonic 3 had. In Sonic 3, each character also acted as the game's difficulty setting, with Tails, Sonic, and Knuckles representing easy, normal, and hard modes respectively. In Mania, however, playing as any of the characters is more or less the same, with only minor differences. Playing as Knuckles is slightly more difficult because he can't jump as high, but the level design rarely reflects this, and when it does, it's painfully obvious that it was a last-minute design choice meant to coax the player into a scripted Knuckles section rather than as an organic component of the level. Also, as a side note, what the hell happened to the awesome transitions from level to level? Sure, there were a few transitions that showed how each level connects to one another, but then there are times where the game just fades out and then loads in the next stage. Like, look at this. I'm standing on top of a structure, way up in the air, the level fades out, and suddenly I'm falling underground into Hydro City Zone. I'm underground, the level fades out, and suddenly I'm in the sky. Like, what? How the hell did I get here?
That does not make sense.
That feels like a missed opportunity to me, and it's something that the developers clearly had the technical know-how and talent to accomplish, though for whatever reason didn't bother incorporating into their level design apart from a few tertiary moments. But aside from that, the level design is very well done and manages to be both a joy to play and a fun challenge to traverse. Something else that Sonic Mania does quite well compared to previous entries in the series is that it always gives the player a sense that they're the ones who are in control. Part of the problem I've had with basically every Sonic game released in the last 20 years is that they all take control away from the player and lead them by the nose on a sightseeing tour. The old chestnut of a criticism for the original trilogy of games is that you can just hold right to win and the game will basically play itself. This stereotype of the series was, in my opinion, baseless of the original games, but as time went on, every Sonic game release seemed to fit this description more and more. Hold right, or forward in the 3D games, and watch Sonic go fast and rush by a very pretty backdrop that your eyes will never be able to focus on without so much as a passing thought. And yes, I'm including the daytime levels of Sonic Unleashed and the entirety of Sonic Generations in this list of perpetrators. Like, I don't understand what people see in these games. Ew. Sonic Mania, however, understands that sometimes you need to slow down, and knowing when it's the right time to do so is where the game excels. In the levels there are moments of blistering speed and huge set-piece events, but then these are balanced out by areas of some truly exceptional platforming and simplistic puzzles, and somehow the game can seamlessly transition between the two without killing the pacing. Because killing the pacing is the sole responsibility of the special stages, apparently. So, Sonic Mania actually has two different special stages. There are the Emerald stages, which are sort of remakes of the ones from Sonic CD, and then there are the Blue Sphere stages, which can earn you gold and silver medals, which are used to unlock special bonuses for augmenting your non-saved playthroughs. These bonuses include unlocking debug mode, the aforementioned super peel out and insta shield, or my personal favorite, and Knuckles mode, which causes Knuckles to tag along with any character you select. So yeah, if you want to, you can play as Knuckles and Knuckles, and Knuckles, and Knuckles and Knuckles and Knuckles. These are nice little touches and nods to the series and its fans, and they instantly bring a smile to my face. The problem, though, is that the special stages, most notably the Blue Sphere stages, are the most hit-or-miss aspect of this game. Now, as I've said in my review of Sonic 3, the Blue Sphere levels are the only special stages I've ever liked in a Sonic game, so you'd think that adding more of them to Sonic Mania would be right up my alley then, right? Well, I thought so too, but apparently not. There are 32 Blue Sphere stages overall, with 14 of them being remakes of the ones from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Completing these stages doesn't reward you with a Chaos Emerald like they used to, but rather give you a gold or silver medal. Silver for completing the stage, and gold for doing so while also collecting all the rings. And just like before, these stages are a lot of fun, but the biggest problem is how you access them. Just like in Sonic 2 and 3, running past a checkpoint with a certain number of rings, 25 in this case, causes some sparkly bits to appear overhead. If you touch these sparkly bits, you'll be transported to the Blue Sphere stages. And at least for me, I found that these stages occurred way too often, bringing the the pacing of the level to a grinding halt each time. Maybe it's just because I'm too good at Sonic games, which I doubt because this happens to be one of the most challenging games I've played so far this year, but it wasn't uncommon for me to be rolling around at the speed of sound with more than 100 rings at any given time. As previously stated, you only need 25 rings in order to access these stages, and because Sonic Mania is about as generous with its checkpoints as Dark Souls 3 is with its bonfires, you're going to be seeing a lot of blue balls over the course of a single level. That came out wrong. This leads to a stop-and-go style of gameplay that constantly changes the pacing, playstyle, and overall enjoyment of the game. In Sonic 3, there was an expectation of a change in pace that preceded accessing the blue sphere stages, and as such, this choppy progression was minimized. The large rings that warped you to the Emerald stages were usually found off the beaten path. Because of this, you oftentimes had to slow down and explore the level to find them, and once found, they acted as a reward for your efforts, whereas in Sonic Mania, these stages come across more as a chore, something you feel compelled to do simply to unlock everything. Checkpoints are usually placed in areas you're meant to run past, and more often than not I found myself having to come to a screeching halt and backtrack just to enter the special stage when I should be running by and continuing on with the gorgeously fun level I'm currently playing. Basically what I'm saying is that entering the special stages in this manner was a poor design choice in Sonic 2, and it's still a poor design choice in Sonic Mania. The sparkly checkpoints worked in Sonic 3 because they only took you to throwaway special stages where you can obtain rings, 1-ups, and other items, meaning that you can ignore them altogether and not miss out on unlocking anything. Entering them was only incentivized if the player needed some rings, a shield, or some extra lives, and as such the pacing was controlled entirely by the player, not by some arbitrary need to unlock more goodies. The progression of the blue sphere stages is also independent of the main game and spans every save file, so once all the gold medals are achieved, there's no reason to ever play these stages again, yet the sparkly bits still appear when passing by a checkpoint, so now the chore becomes trying to avoid accidentally entering one of these stages rather than feeling compelled to stop and play. Either way, this hinders the pacing of the main levels and became downright annoying in my second and third playthroughs since I had already completed all these levels. And then there's the fact that most of the new blue sphere stages aren't really all that great. Many of the new stages incorporate some gimmick or cheap trick into their design that has the effect of making them far too easy or far too frustrating to complete. To be fair, some of these use this to great effect and manage to pose a unique and fun challenge, but others are just downright bad, like this one. This one can go fuck itself. Then there are the Emerald stages, which are okay. These are sort of a reimagining of the ones from Sonic CD, which has you chasing a UFO around a track. In these stages, you'll need to gather rings to add to an ever-depleting supply that ends the stage should you run out. Likewise, you'll also have to collect blue spheres, though these merely add to a meter that increases your speed once full. Get up enough speed to catch the UFO before you run out of rings or fall off the course, and you'll obtain one of the 7 Chaos Emeralds. It's a neat little mini game that, in theory, I like. The problem that I had with these is that they ended up like the majority of Emerald stages found in Sonic games, and that they're all about spectacle first and tight, engaging gameplay second. Running around the course ends up being a frustrating endeavor as you wrestle with the controls and try to stay on the path rather than in the parts that slow you down or worse, cause you to fall off and end the stage. Balancing the collection of blue spheres and rings is a challenging little seesaw mechanic that I actually found to be quite engaging, but the controls of moving about the course and the low level of traction and character weight are what shot these stages in the foot for me. Like the Emerald stages in Sonic 2, there isn't a lot of room for error, and mastery of the stage comes not from an increase in skill, but from the memorization and familiarity of the level. And these issues in controlling your character is only increased as you reach Mach 2, and by Mach 3 you better hope that UFO is nearby because the risk of hitting obstacles and falling off the course has just increased exponentially. Though, to the game's credit, I probably would consider these my second favorite Emerald stages overall after the original Blue Sphere levels, if only because I did start enjoying myself in these levels once I had their layouts memorized. And once I figured out that you only need to reach Mach 2 in order to catch up to the UFO, which I'd recommend trying if you found yourself having difficulties with these stages. And then there are the bosses, which, like the special stages, are hit or miss, though thankfully not quite to the same extent. Many of the bosses incorporate the use of gimmicks in order to defeat them, similar to those of Sonic CD, though Sonic Mania is a lot more restrained in this regard. Some of these bosses are quite fun and subvert pre-existing bosses to great effect. My favorite of these would probably have to be the mini-boss from Hydro City Zone, which has Sonic and friends controlling Robotnik's machine from Sonic 3 and using it to suck the evil scientist into the rotating blades while avoiding depth charges. Then there are other bosses that require you to use the game's physics in order to hit them, and these are probably the worst overall. The one with Metal Sonic in particular requires you to bounce smaller robots into him while also dodging energy blasts, and this can be pretty frustrating until you figure out exactly what needs to be done, but once you do, the boss loses all challenge and is trivial to defeat. Then there's this thing that's easily the worst boss in the game, and it unfortunately puts a damper on Flying Battery Zone, which happens to be one of the best levels. But those are the exception, not the rule, as the remainder of the bosses range from good to downright great once you get the hang of them, and even the bosses that end up being pretty meh don't really tarnish the game all that much. But if there's one aspect of the game that hits the nail squarely on the head, it's gotta be the music, and I'm just gonna say it. Sonic Mania has the best soundtrack of the entire series. Yes, even better than Sonic 3. And my god, is that something I never thought I'd say. Of course, some of this stems from the fact that many of the levels that were chosen to be remixed for the project just so happen to be levels with some of the best tracks of the entire franchise, but that shouldn't be taken as to say that Sonic Mania's OST is only good because it stands on the shoulders of giants, because some of the arranged tracks for the game are even better than the original. Fucking awesome, right? Sonic Mania also excels in the level of polish that it has over pretty much every other game in the series. Little touches and nods to the series can be found everywhere you look, and no stone was seemingly left unturned when it came to giving the game its charm, such as the beautifully animated opening and closing cinematics or little glimpses of each character's personality you get through their sprite animations. During my 30-ish hours spent with the game, I did come across 2 major bugs that resulted in me getting stuck or dying, but they didn't really impact my progression or enjoyment of the game all that much. One of these glitches was replicatable, however, though I'm not going to show it because it happened during the final boss, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't finished the game yet. Apart from these 2 instances, I didn't encounter any other issues, and from what I've heard through the grapevine, there's a stability patch coming in the near future, so I'm not going to hold these glitches against the game, so take that information as you will. Ultimately, Sonic Mania is a pretty damn good game, and it's easily the best game in the series since Sonic 3 and Knuckles. While it has a handful of questionable design choices, hit-or-miss bosses, and special stages, and the presentation and consistency of the game and its world isn't as tight as it could have been, this is still a game that I can see myself coming back to for many years to come. Definitely give it a shot if you haven't already.